Oh, extraordinary stuff. Now then, let's go through the papers, shall we? We've got our paper reviewers back. They are Sharon Dhaliwal and Thomas Copeland, so welcome back to both of you. And let's kick off, shall we? The first paper that I've got here, Sharon, is one that you've picked out in the Sunday Telegraph today. The headline here is Welby ban on gay clergy spouses at Church Summit, very painful. So explain, unpack that headline for us, could you? Sharon, I'm going to ask you to stop because we can't hear you. Could that be at your end?
That was my end.
That was
Sorry,
your end.
it was a very typical
that was like a little
thing to
dress
do,
rehearsal.
wasn't it?
But that's no problem. We'll go for that one again. Talk us through the Sunday Telegraph story.
Sure. Okay. So the Archbishop of Canterbury has decided to bar the spouses of gay clergy from the Global Church Summit. So it's to not allow the spouses of LGBTQ plus people to come to the summit. Now, the summit is somewhere where people come from all around the world to talk about Christianity, to talk about things that they could possibly do, think about the way to move the church forward. And it seems like a very backwards kind of thing to do if they are considering how to move the church forward, to then say that queer people aren't allowed their spouses within that space. And it seems to be an ongoing rhetoric with a lot of Christian religious groups, I find. And so it's kind of, it was a very difficult thing to see that's something that's still continuing to happen. As a queer woman myself, that's not something that I would expect to still be happening in 2022. And so then a church leader from Rwanda said that was going to be a very difficult and painful thing for people to have to put up with. So it was just a kind of backwards thing for 2022 to be able to read.
Okay.
Sorry, my light fell then.
It's all happening. We're technically challenged all over the place. We'll let you sort the light out, and we'll cross over to Thomas then, shall we? And Thomas, you've also picked out an article from the Sunday Telegraph, and a lot of focus this morning on immigration because of the leadership candidates in the Tory race. Focusing particularly on that today. Tell us a little bit about, now the article I got up there is about winter blackouts. Thomas, did you want to talk about winter blackouts or immigration?
Well, listen, we'll start with winter blackouts and see how far we go. So, I mean, as if immigration wasn't a big enough problem, how about that as a link? As if immigration wasn't a big enough problem for the Tory leadership
candidates. You made my life so much easier, Thomas, making sense of my rambled introduction there. So,
listen, I can do it on commission, don't worry. I think what you've got here is another big problem that's going to be facing the incoming Prime Minister this winter, which is energy prices and gas prices in particular. This story is a story from the Sunday Telegraph talking about how households could be asked to switch off their lights this winter in order to avoid blackouts. So it's something the EU's actually moved towards already. They've already asked European Union member countries to cut their gas usage by next month or from next month by 15%. And that's pretty mammoth if you think about it, because they have a really big reliance on essentially Russian gas that comes via Nord Stream 1 pipeline. Now, the United Kingdom is less reliant on Russian gas than it is for the rest of Europe is, but obviously it's plugged into the rest of that kind of European system, and so blockades in Europe have a big impact here as well. And so the National Grid's having meetings about this. They're talking about how they've got a new winter report that's coming out 3 months early. Perhaps that tells you something about how concerned they are in the coming months. Ministers, though, and I think this is the most tragic part of this entire story, ministers believe, though, that actually it might not be necessary to issue public appeals to the general public to ask people to reduce the amount of energy that they're using, gas that they're using, because the price of gas is so extraordinarily high that people are going to be walking around in the dark practically anyway. You've got energy providers suggesting that energy price cap could go up to as high as 3,200 by the time you get to October, up again by another couple of thousand next January. And it's worth saying, just very quickly here, this is where kind of the rubber hits the road in terms of showing support for trying to economically isolate Russia. This is where it hurts us. his gas and the use of electricity in the winter. It's been really easy to support Ukraine, against a Russian invasion up until this point, because it hasn't really had any consequences on our standard of living. This is where that happens, and it's that moment in which you say, well, actually, if you want to impose sanctions on another country around the world, or try to reduce your reliance on Russian oil, for example, that has consequences. Those consequences are increased gas prices and trying to encourage people to use yet less gas into the winter months. That's where that happens.
Sharon, we're going to be talking about this so much, aren't we? Especially when the weather does start getting colder. It's not just an issue of people's rising bills, although that is a massive issue.
Oh, totally. I mean,
Sorry,
this is
I
going
was
to be...
putting that to Sharon. I don't know if she heard me there.
Oh, sorry, excuse me.
No, don't
Sorry.
worry at all.
Sorry, say that again.
Sharon, this is just going to be a really big topic, isn't it? When the winter approaches, it's not just people's rising bills, it's where we get our energy from.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a massive concern at the moment with like my family, for example. So my family who are retired and they can't really put too much money towards bills at the moment are very concerned about how they're going to survive in the coming years, in fact. And my dad's really worried about the winter. And so he's also been researching about where he could get his energy from, and he's confused and is conflicted. He's conflicted at the moment, and I think that's a lot of people out there at the moment, and it's not a comfortable state to be in.
Okay, let's move on, shall we, Sharon? Because you've spotted a piece about aliens, so talk us through that.
Yeah, so I found this really fun piece where NASA said that they may use satellites to look for UFO sightings. And I just thought it was really interesting because it used to be considered like a conspiracy. If people talked about UFOs or aliens, then, you'd just be that weird person in the group of friends. And now it's something that NASA are saying out loud, like, we are going to go out looking for them. And they've even said themselves, like, it's kind of, I guess, you have to consider that there's other things out there. It's not just humans in this whole vast universe. And so it's really fascinating to see, like, they're going to go out there, they're going to look for aliens. It's not a sci-fi film, it's reality. And it's really exciting to see because, there's a huge possibility that there's other things than humans out there.
Yeah, well, it's such an extraordinary subject, isn't it? And one that sadly we can't delve into any further. Thomas, did you want to make a quick comment on that?
All I was going to say was the pictures from the James Webb Telescope, I'm sure you talked about them on Sky not that long ago, showed you just how tiny in the universe we are. So if anybody didn't believe, statistically, surely there's got to be something else out there. But I think we have our own problems. I wouldn't go inviting them to tea.
Oh, go on, you've got to be friendly, haven't you? We are going to wrap it up now. Apologies for my getting confused about the stories. We had technical issues, all sorts, but still, you made perfect sense, both of you. It's good to see you both. And we appreciate your company this morning. Thanks very much indeed. Thomas and Sharon, thanks for taking us through the papers. Do stay with us here on Sky News Breakfast. We're going to have all the latest on the race for number 10, with both candidates vying to lead the Tory party, promising to get tough on illegal immigration.